Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Chocolate Saiyan, Mark Doxy, Sleeping Warrior, and Arwin. How the devil are you all?
All good, man. All good.
Very good, folks.
Yeah,
Hello.
Christ be with you, Nathan.
Nice. So, where do we begin? Housekeeping, maybe? Hey, Plain
Good
Truth.
morning, everybody.
Good to have you,
Hello,
Plain
my
Truth.
good man.
Let's just get
Plain
Plain
Truth,
Truth's
what's
volume
up?
sorted. While I do so, any signs of curvature, anybody?
Yeah, Slice Barkane is still claiming that I've got curvature in my videos and evidence.
Traitor.
Reassert the position, Sly. You're welcome on any time to present the evidence in my footage of curve, because we'd love to hear from you.
Axial rotation, any signs of that?
Happening.
Any signs of axial rotation, anybody?
Nope.
Nope.
Pressurized system next to a vacuum?
Red's rhetoric claims that gravity does that.
Oh, really? Where does he
Right.
get the pressure from? Any idea? Pressure needs a container, doesn't it? Well,
Yeah, it
I'm not
needs
going
a
to ask that as a
container,
question.
yeah.
Pressure needs a container. So where's he getting
Boils.
that pressure from?
Don't know. We need Reds.
Every time I bring it up, the ballers always have more obfuscations.
Such a
They
simple
never
point, though.
respond to it.
Like,
Although now they have basically tried to copy our tactics, or more like mimic it, because now there seem to be a couple of ballers out there that are asking for evidence of D, which is
Evidence?
hilarious.
D.
I guess D stands for the downward force. And yeah, it's going to be very hard to scientifically prove the downward force,
I've never heard
since we
any
have no clue
Yeah.
what the causal relationship is. We don't know where it's coming from. We can just determine it. We can figure out how it works,
so,
but that's about
so
it. So
It's
that,
easy,
that's
man.
they're
hilarious.
asking,
Just apply
asking
globe
for
head
evidence
standards
of
and drop a
D.
microphone, and that's Bob's your uncle, man. Science achieved.
Now that actually proves gravitational pull.
they're asking for evidence of D, but they don't have evidence of G or R. Like,
Yeah, come on, don't you know? Sticks in the ground, balls in the shed.
yeah, balls in the shed.
I've never heard any ball.
That's what they
Balls in the
got.
shed's a good one.
Yeah. By the way, I want to do a shout out to Iron Realm Media, as he did a shout out to our show and to me personally, and was very flattered by it.
I heard that, and in the chat I said this. I echoed his sentiments, because he basically said, look, Arwin's been banging this drum for quite some time, and it's taken a lot of other people a while to catch up, and in that meantime Arwin's dealt with a lot of ridicule and just kept on saying the same thing, sidestepped the ridicule he's received without any rebuttal. And I too, I didn't, it took me longer to get this than you did, Arwin, and you've been banging it and explaining it. I kind of got it, but not to the degree that you did. So, you know, it is worth commending, because you've kept on banging that same drum, and it is commendable.
Well, thank
I
you.
agree.
To be honest, I was basically doing a geometrical visual analysis of things that we were seeing in the pictures, basically figuring out what is it we see. I didn't actually really understand why it was seen like that. I was just basically trying to analyze what we were seeing, and it's only now in the more recent months that things have been starting to leak in as what is the actual cause. And before we were speculating that might have something to do with diffraction. I'm kind of stepping back from that, although diffraction is a very interesting optical phenomena, still worth studying on its own merit. But I'm pretty much convinced that it is purely caused by the combination of perspective and obstruction. And I'm going to explain it in detail, uninterrupted. It's going to be lovely in my next hangout this Tuesday. So I'm going to do a full explanation, perhaps use some visual aids to really explain how it works. And yeah, I could now quickly do a sketch to start it off, but yeah, I'll just wait a little longer. Still have 3 days.
Did anybody catch Flat Earth on the Hot Potato show with Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole last night?
I mirrored it.
It was great.
I did.
Yeah.
Alternative medicine show was very interesting. So much information. It's
He gave
incredible.
Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole gave us a good shout out, and it makes me realise that people are not just listening, but they're actually realising and adopting it now, which is what we need to do, because ultimately this point has been made before by other people. I know that Jaren's made it. I know that Taboo Conspiracies made the point. I know that, in fact, actually, Antonio was one of my first ever hangouts where I heard this point being made, and at the time I didn't understand it. But thinking back to it, Antonio was probably the first one that I ever heard making it. So other flat earthers have made the point before, but we've never beaten the drum about it because it's never gained the traction. It's almost like the weight of this evidence has never been appreciated by everybody. So obviously that's why I'm pushing it, because I wanted to see that everybody realised what was going on, because this is where the fraud is, this is where the deception is, this is where it goes wrong for us, and we need to spot it. We need to be aware that it is a problem, point it out, and get the correction for it. Because if they're going to allow a correction for this thing called standard refraction, the presuppositional R, the bendy light at the rate of 7/6, then it makes sense that we should also expect the correction and the adjustment for perspective, because it is a thing, and it clearly has never been applied. No baller has ever applied perspective with regards to the target that we're applying the refracted hidden value against.
Andy,
Every
when you
baller puts it in at the full height, and that's clearly, utterly, and 100% wrong. And now we're at the point where even Dawn Treader understands the point. And even though he doesn't really accept it, the fact that he gets that means that we're actually getting, the message is getting through, it's getting home. So it's now really, we're in the position now where, well, Nathan, maybe what do we do next? Do we demand concessions from the ballers for getting it wrong all them times, like the Rumpus, Ruhif, well, maybe not Ruhif, he's quite new to it, but all the protagonists on their side who have ever presented or criticised evidence when they've been presented it with that curve calculator? Or do we move on without them completely and just show that the effect of it is this? You guys have got it wrong. What do we do next?
Anthony, when you first mentioned it, you couldn't quite believe that it was going to be that simple, could you? You weren't quite sure. Is it really this simple? And going back about a year ago, when everybody else was mentioning it, again they were all going, "Is it this simple?" And it really has turned out to be that simple.
Well, what it is, it's the way they describe the refraction, right? Or the way they describe the hidden value is orthographic. But in the real world, the way we all see the Earth, we all see that if we live on a plane, things get smaller. But if we live on a ball, things get smaller and drop behind the curve. And the further away it gets, a bulge arises between you and the target. That gets, relatively speaking, it gets double the height. So as things are getting smaller in the background and the bulge is getting bigger in the foreground, them three factors, when related together in one animation, which we need somebody to document or we need somebody to do for us, those three things are not being demonstrated when you get the refracted hidden value and just apply it against a mountain that's 1,000 foot tall.
Should we be sticking to side elevation rather than orthographic?
No, orthographic is side. What we should be doing is reducing the height of the object. If we're going to do it orthographic,
I know that, but they were playing semantics the other day, weren't they?
Yeah, can I give a bit of clarity to that? So, in essence, the part that we are focused on is the omission of perspective. An orthographic view is a three-dimensional representation. So what Chris presented on the QED demonstration yesterday is all, quote, orthographic or perspective, because it is without perspective, i.e. just three-dimensional sizes, actual sizes retained, or
Yes, correct.
perspective view. Well, when you put it into a side elevation, which is just a technical drawing term, it's a semantical point, because that's not the point we're arguing. That's what Rumpus wanted to talk about, so he can jabber on about it for half an hour yesterday. And I said, no, I don't want to have this semantical argument about the difference between orthographic view and side elevation, because it's a completely moot point. Our point being that regardless of whether it's orthographic or side elevation, those two views ignore perspective. And that is the issue. So in answer to Anthony's question, I absolutely have been insisting that people start to make retractions, because they have failed. They've failed to apply the secondary function of perspective. This needs to be calculated and then applied before the hidden value is applied to the target. And none of them have ever done this. So absolutely, I want to push for retractions from the people who haven't done this.
But then that leads to a tactical question, which is, are they ever going to concede the point? Because if I were a baller, like Rumpus, for instance, if I wanted to argue their point, I would never, ever concede it, because he knows that the effects of it are huge. But somebody like Dawn that maybe doesn't understand the effects of it and sees it on its merits will say, well, it is intellectually honest to admit that we've never done that and probably should have done it. Because he said it yesterday. He said, why don't you just adjust for it and nobody would bother about it? Well, they would bother about it. That's why we haven't done it yet. I mean, we have considered whether or not we should throw this out there now, or should we wait until later?
Well, for some reason you're using Dawn as the acid test, but that's an audience perspective thing. Not perspective is probably the wrong word. That's the way the audience would get to view this or decide for themselves. They can be the judge in that regard, because we've laid it out there in as concise, and it's not a simple issue to cover, but in as much detail as we feel is necessary for people of all understanding levels to get the point. And at this stage, if there is no concession made, then that demonstrates the type of people we are dealing with. And if they never make any concession, I'm fine with that. I'll happily point out till whenever that Gem Panda and Negator XX and Paper Explanator and Child's Flat Earth Math and Rumpus and anybody who has ever used the calculator and compared it to a photograph has failed to compare it accurately, to do a fair comparison, because they've excluded the very real nature of perspective. Now they can come in and try and obfuscate that point. They have done, but they've failed. This isn't going to go away. And a lot of it in the comments at the moment is just pure denial. It's amusing, but it's it doesn't change the fact that you've got your two choices. You can either accept that we do encounter perspective. That's something that I'm not going to have a difficult time convincing any neutral member of the public of. People know this instinctively, so that's no issue. Or you can decide that the globe doesn't have it in the calculations, and therefore it isn't necessary, and therefore it isn't necessary. And you can hear that side of the argument and accept that side of the argument too if you want to. I don't care. I know which way my bread's buttered, and the audience are the same. They don't need, a Skype group call with the Rumpus to convince them otherwise. They can just see that he doesn't address this issue, but openly admits that there is a secondary function that needs to be applied to the calculation on account of the fact that it is not performing viewing functionality. Au contraire. So this is something I don't mind them not conceding, the bunch of cowards. The amount of flack we got when we got it wrong, and we're cap in hand immediately conceded it. Yeah, we got it wrong. Yes, we'll take our blows. We are not infallible. So we took our licks. These bunch of cowards, most of them haven't got their faces or names out there. Are they going to take their licks even though they're faceless potatoes? Of course not, because they're total cowards. Even though they've got it wrong, they won't admit it. Well, that's fine by me, you cowards. I'll just laugh at you.
2 points following on from that. These faceless cowards are the reason why we no longer see people like a Paul Voigt. He's dropped off the scene. Oh yeah, it's because he hates Riley or he hates Nathan. Well, yeah, you're not coming in anymore, and you claim to be a physicist. Why would you not be challenging the views of a flat earther if we're all retards? Because it's down to you guys to show that we're not getting this wrong, and we don't see people like Paul Voigt anymore.
No, that's because he's digging. He's digging to find that molten core.
Yeah, we don't see people like Curved Water anymore. We don't see Jeremy doesn't come in anymore. He lurks in the chat, but he doesn't come in anymore. But the other point is that Nathan said that I use Dawn as the acid test. No, I don't. That's not accurate, because what I'm doing with Dawn is I'm contrasting Dawn against the people that are pushing the official narrative, with Dawn and people like Dawn who accept what people that push the narrative say on it just because they've said it. So, for instance, if you have a line of ballers, 10 of which are the followers and 10 of which are the lead, 5 are the followers and 5 are the leaders that lead the movement, then you can see when you get an awkward question that the 5 that follow will like kind of take a step back, and they will look to the likes of the Rumpus or to Ruhif or somebody like that, and they'll not speak, they'll not answer because they want somebody to do it for them. I'm contrasting Dawn with the people that are being dishonest. I'm saying that Dawn's more of an innocent victim than he is a protagonist and therefore dishonest. So I'm not saying that he's the acid test. I'm just contrasting to say that not all of them are dishonest. I think there's only one or, well, maybe 10 of them that's pushing it officially. And everybody else that follows their lead, they're the ones that are the innocent victims, but are indoctrinated and brainwashed so much so that they can't think for themselves anymore. And that's where I put Dawn into that.
Fair enough. I mean, I'd call that 6 of one and a half dozen of the other, in the respect that he's just a neutral bystander. You know, he's come on a couple of shows ago and said, "Oh, they're moaning at me because I've had my own individual thought." And it's like, well, yeah, that's how it is on the Globehead side, and you know, there's a few others. Cat Earth, who's done the same, moaning that he got bullied.
Yeah, Cat Earth, exactly. Cat Earth is in the same mold as Dawn.
Yeah, so they're like, but that's why I say that I'd use him as a litmus test in that regard. You know, he's obviously on the bull side of the argument, but he's in flat Earth in quotes. So, you know, he's a good little test for that. Is Dawn, that, and he's not the sharpest tool in the box. So if he can get it, anyone can get it. So if our point's been driven home enough for Dawn to understand, no offense to you, Dawn, but you know, you would confess that you're not a physicist. You know, you're not Paul Voigt, who's buggered off because we've got him toast to the fire with the perpetuating molten iron core. But that's a different story.
But it's the same, John. It's the same kind of thing, though. This story is that we have a molten iron core, and Paul Voigt pushes the idea that it's made of iron and it's molten at about 10,000 degrees Celsius, but somehow is responsible for the magnetic generation of the fields that we experience on the Earth, even though when iron gets past its Curie temperature of about 750 degrees, it can no longer maintain its own magnetic charge unless it has induced magnetism, and on their model there is no induction of magnetism. It relies on the perpetual motion of the lava and the magma underneath the crust, and Paul pushes that. So he's one of the people that we've called for evidence in the same way that we're now asking for the evidence for, you know, this presuppositional R value. Now, where is the radius evidence? And also, where is the evidence that supports the perspective being considered? And obviously, there's none of that either.
But
So
Riley, do remember that as soon as they basically figured out that we were right about the liquid metal not being able to grasp or contain a magnetic influence, they quickly started to bring up new ideas that there might be water somewhere within the molten iron core causing the magnetism.
Yeah.
So,
and I think what we need to do is the distance to the sun at 93 million miles, that doesn't seem to exist. I know that they all say that's the distance, but when you push it, if a flat earther pushes it against a ball earther, they will usually come back with, well, it's the application of Kepler's third law, which talks about the interplanetary motion. And when you look into that, that makes reference to 1 AU, 1 astronomical unit, which is the 93 million miles. But where does the 93 million miles bit come from? I think we need to pin that argument on somebody. Let somebody be that sacrificial lamb. So maybe, for instance, Ruhif. I know he's not been on for a while. I think that's probably to do with the time of the day for him. It's late in the night for him, since Nathan started doing it later in the afternoon. But I think we need to pin that 93 million mile sun on one of the ballers, so that that baller then has to go away and find it and then come back with an answer. Maybe it's the Rumpus. Maybe we pin it on somebody else. But I think we need to pin it somewhere. If we don't pin it somewhere, it's a glorious opportunity that we're not exploiting to show how much nonsense these ballers have got and no real evidence for it.
But
Well, that's
you've already
the way
pegged that
the
down.
debate's going to go. There's nothing on the face of the Earth now to prove any curvature, especially with now that we've hammered the perspective problem.
Hey Milu,
And
how you doing?
the ballers are now going to go upwards and into the cosmos to prove their theory. So we do need to hammer those celestial anomalies.
I was
They
just going to
have
say,
no
you've
evidence
tied this
past
down already to the G
what they've
constant, though,
read in the
Anthony.
textbook.
You went through this when you tied it down. You got AU tied back to the G constant. You've already done this. It all spanned back to Cavendish.
Hey, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So do you guys not believe that mass can attract mass? Is that not a thing for you guys?
Yeah,
Okay. Do
it's
you want
only in a very small scale, and then it's called the capillary force, and there's surface tension, but these are all very small scales in a limited range
Um,
of sizes where it works.
Magnetism.
And other than that, there's just magnetism, and
So,
magnetism
like-
only applies to a certain salt being diluted in water and ferric metals.
See, because I believe every mass has an attractive force on other masses.
So you believe that? Have you got any evidence that supports it?
Well, I've been seeing a couple videos on YouTube of replications of the Cavendish experiment, and I would like to know, like, what do you guys have against it?
Right. It's
Well,
not a scientifically
reproducing
valid
is just-
experiment
why
with a
is that
cause and
the
effect
only
relationship. It's in
experiment that
no way
demonstrates-
scientific. That's the problem with it. It's a
Sorry.
sideshow circus. It's just nonsense. It's balls hanging from a torsion bar. That's not a scientific experiment. It's not establishing any cause and effect. It's nonsense. That's the problem with it. If you want to believe that those balls dangling from a torsion can give you the weight of Mars, then that's your delusion. It's not mine.
That's not what I'm claiming, though.
No, it is.
Well,
That's exactly what the G constant establishes. You can weigh the sun using the Cavendish balls. That's what it does. It gives you the mass
No.
of Earth. That's what it does. It's a weight. It's a scale.
Gives you-
It's designed
gives
to
you the
weigh
distance.
Earth. That's its job. It's
But
ludicrous.
it's not.
The amount of things that are based on that presuppositional R
Cavendish
value
is.
is crazy, and Nathan's right. The Cavendish experiment, from that, we can derive everything that you can do. So
I
my
don't-
question is, why do you think it's credible?
Well, let's think about it like this: if mass attracts mass, that's a claim. How would you test that claim?
Well, first of all, you have to establish the fact of why you're even asking if mass attracts mass, because that's a presupposition based
All right,
on a prior commitment.
Right. But I'm saying, as a skeptic, if someone were to claim this, how would you test that claim?
You wouldn't
We don't-
test it
Well,
yet. You have
why-
to. You have to primarily establish why they're making the assertion in the first place.
Right.
So
That's
my
what science
question-
is
You
for.
Let me
can
ask
test
you
it.
something.
That's what science
No,
is
but
for.
I-
So the
let me
first
ask-
step in the scientific
can
method
test
is to
it.
observe a phenomena. That's the point. So you're
right.
just asserting it
Okay.
rather than actually observing any phenomena occurring and then testing it. That's not what you're doing. You're not formulating a hypothesis based on an observed phenomena. You're stringing some balls from a shed. It's ludicrous.
Right. So the two balls in the shed. There's two balls in the shed, one of a larger mass and one of a lesser mass, and the observed phenomena would be you see the ball of lesser mass being attracted to the ball of greater mass. So from that,
Really?
Um,
Do you see that? Are you looking
yeah, that's-
24 hours in a day at
Well,
those balls? Do you see them?
So
yeah, you
my
can see
Is
that.
there a stable motion?
right, my
Yeah, you
question.
can see that.
My
This is not a
question for this
scientific
guy
experiment.
is-
This is not a scientific experiment. It hasn't isolated any variables. It's just nonsense.
yes,
It's
it
not
has.
observing a naturally
It has.
occurring phenomena. I've just explained this. If you want to establish a cause and effect for something, you perform a scientific experiment. You formulate a scientific hypothesis after observing a naturally occurring phenomena. That's what science does. Stringing balls in a shed is just nonsense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but
let
By
me-
the way, to be more
Milo.
specific,
But
steel
hold up,
balls.
it's
They're
nonsense.
not
but-
stone balls. They're not
Yeah.
lead balls.
No,
It is
the-
nonsense.
should-
It's like me asserting that you can chop a woman in half, and then I say, look, on stage you have a woman being put into a box and then a saw being run through her. Yeah? Well, it's just a trick. Like anything with the heliocentric model, it's just a circus
Yes.
trick.
Let me
But it's not
just
a
bring up
trick.
one
You
point.
do
Let me just
yourself.
yeah,
Go on,
but let me
Plain
just
Truth.
bring up one point, and I try to approach this objectively by watching
Please, yeah.
legitimately 5 different YouTube videos where these guys were reproducing the Cavendish experiment.
Uh-huh.
In each and every video, they said this is incredibly difficult. We can't isolate these variables. Every
Which
time we
variable?
think, okay, listen, go watch the videos. I'm just saying I
I've
picked
seen
5.
the videos.
Okay,
I've seen
well,
the videos.
okay, but in all
And I
5
don't-
of the ones, that I watched,
Mhm.
it wasn't a straight reproduction of what Cavendish did. It wasn't equivocal, and
Okay. Uh-huh.
they all said we can't do it. We can't
So-
do it.
Okay.
Milo, can I ask you a question?
Let's just say hold up. Let's just say there are some variables when conducting this test that you would have to control for. How about we brainstorm and think about what variables would actually skew these results? So
No, you just have to demolish it based on the fact that it's in no way scientific, and your entire worldview is based on the outcome of a non-scientific, non-empirical, hardly ever replicatable test that you made up. We don't have to suddenly brainstorm new variables to apply to your nonsense. We just have to point out that it's total nonsense, which it is. It's in
I'd
no
like to
way
help them out.
scientific
someone claimed that
at
there's
all.
variables that haven't been accounted for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
that's
Milo,
what
let
you
me
do
let
when
me
you
ask
apply
a
the
question.
scientific method.
If you were going to do,
No, it's not
Hold
about
up,
the
if you
science.
were
going to-
Come on.
Let them perform their trickery with the balls in the shed.
It's not trickery.
They think it is real. Okay, let's help them disprove
Right.
it.
Exactly.
Milo.
Thank you, Arwen.
Milo, if
so
you were going to
don't
do an
use
experiment,
steel
Let-
balls.
let-
Don't
let Goku
use
talk.
any
Let
kind
Goku.
of magnetic things.
So-
that can be
But
so
it's
Arwen-
pointless.
by magnetic
Why are we
So
trying to
Arwen,
unravel a
it's
magic
been-
trick? Milu, can you
it's-
answer me this?
it's
Do you know how they perform the sawing the woman in half trick?
Nathan,
Just
if I
answer
did
me.
that-
Do
if I
you
did the trick
understand
at
how
home,
they
I would saw a
perform?
woman in half.
Do you understand how they do that trick?
But Nathan, listen, if I were to perform that trick, if I were to test that claim that you can saw a woman in half and have her live, if I were to test that, I would find out that it was a trick. After sawing a woman in half, I would find out that it's a trick.
Do you know how
would
it's
be
done?
arrested.
Hold on, you haven't
Yeah.
answered my question. You haven't answered my question. Do you know how they do it?
Yeah, there's two people in the box.
Right. So it's just a trick. So dissecting up the
Right.
trick and saying
But
we
we
could
didn't-
apply different variables, it's still just a trick.
But Nathan, we didn't know that till after we tested it. After
Oh,
we
right.
found
So
out the
we should
trick.
test your magic trick, should we? We should start performing
test
your
it.
magic trick, should we? No.
Well, Nathan, answer
No.
me this: if you were to hang two balls, one of
Well,
a
why is it
greater
that I
mass and
say
one of
I'm
a
not
lesser
interested
mass?
in your magic trick and you start
Uh-huh.
detailing the magic trick again?
No, because
Milo,
what I'm saying is that
can I
mass
ask you a question?
mass has a property of mass is this attractive force to other mass.
No, it's not.
That's a.
I have never
Now
seen that ever
that's
occur
the claim
ever.
you're trying to
That's
prove.
just nonsense, and you're trying to
It's a-
prove
well,
it
it's a
with this
fact now.
nonsense. You've never
Milo,
ever
let me
seen it
ask you a
happen.
question.
Never ever has
Mm-hmm.
that happened to two objects of mass been attracted together unless they have magnetic forces.
How would you know? How would you know? You haven't
Because I've
tested
never
it,
seen it
so
occur. I've never seen that ever occur ever. Have you?
You haven't tested it, so
Yes.
how would you
Not
know?
tested
Yes,
it,
I
seen
have.
it
That
occur.
was gonna be
If
my
the
question.
Twisting my
scale is
words, I've
small
never
enough,
seen it
Can you let
happen.
go?
particles will
When have you
start
seen it
to
happen,
attract
Milu?
each
When have you
other,
seen
but
it
only
happen in
very
your
small
day-to-day
scale.
life? When
Can
have
we
you
let
seen
go
this
of
occur?
Yeah, let me just ask this question. If you
Hold
were
on.
going
When
to
have
do
you
an
seen it
experiment,
occur?
like,
When has this
come
occurred,
on.
Milu? When has this
Can we
occurred?
hear
When have you
Goku?
seen? When
Goku
have you
has
seen
had-
two
wants to
objects of
ask me
mass
a question.
attracting each other?
Chocolate saying.
Chocolate saying,
yeah,
sorry.
I mean
Go ahead.
that's basically what I was gonna ask. If you
Go
were
ahead, ask
going
it.
to do an experiment like the Cavendish experiment, right? That would
Mm-hmm.
come from observing something in real life. Now, where in real life have you seen mass other than magnets,
Mm-hmm.
magnetism? In real life, where have you seen a mass
have.
attracted to another mass?
I have.
Where have you seen that,
I would
Arvin?
love to explain it if I don't get interrupted, but
Go ahead.
if the particles, which is also material,
Mass. Yeah,
is
exactly.
small enough, then
Uh-huh.
in relation to the mass, the surface tension, which is a very much a force, becomes
Hey Jay,
whoa.
can you hear us?
If
Yeah,
this
and
mass
I
is
get-
small enough, then the surface tension will become in relation to the mass so high that actual microparticles will be attracted to each other, even of its own kind,
so
of
you-
other
so-
kinds, if they are not repellent molecularly. Like this works with dust. It clumps
Orange,
Yeah,
together.
I was
Orange,
just gonna
so what's-
say
It's
that you're
only
talking
in the
about
micro
the way
scale.
dust.
After
up.
a
The
way
certain
dust-
point,
Mhm.
if after a certain point, if
Right.
a ball basically, if it becomes big enough, then
Mhm.
the mass becomes too great for the surface tension to basically let
Right.
it attract to another
So hold
piece
on.
of mass.
So you said dust, which is matter, right?
Yeah.
With mass, and it's being attracted to things with larger mass, right?
Other mass,
It's
any mass.
electrostatic
Other mass,
forces.
any
Only
mass.
because-
So what's
But
wrong with scaling this?
only because the mass is small enough for the
Uh-huh.
surface tension to be able to set in, and
So what's
it needs to be close enough.
No,
so
those
what's
are
what's
electrostatic
wrong with
forces.
scaling this
Those are
experiment?
electrostatic
It
forces.
has been scaled.
Those are
So,
electrostatic
okay, so that's the
forces. The
Cavendish,
dust
no?
is positively charged and it goes towards something negatively charged. That's an electrostatic attraction.
Yeah, Nathan, you wouldn't find
It
that out till
falls
after you
under
test it.
the surface tension category. It's very specifically described effect.
Right. So what's wrong with scaling this experiment to something with
It's not an
larger
experiment.
masses to see if
Because
that
it's not
attractive
an
force still
experiment.
exists?
It is not an experiment. I've just explained this. Are you deaf? Did I not just explain that it's not a scientific experiment?
How so?
Right, what's the hypothesis for the experiment? What's the observed phenomena?
Object of greater mass attracts objects of lesser mass.
That's not a scientifically valid hypothesis. You need to establish
And
a cause and
why?
effect. What's the independent and dependent variable for the hypothesis? That's what you
What's
need to
the
establish.
independent variable?
Yeah.
The variable that I'm varying, it would be the mass of an object. So that would be the cause. And the result would be the attractive force between the two objects.
And how do you vary the mass?
You take a bowling ball and you test it out, and then you take a bigger bowling ball and you test it out, or you can vary the mass of whatever you're trying to attract. So you can vary the masses.
But what have we seen? What's the observed phenomena? What's the naturally occurring phenomena that you have observed?
Masses, objects of greater mass.
When have you seen this
attract.
happen? This
No,
is back to the
Milo,
original
no,
question.
Milo,
that's an
just-
assumption. No, the
just to
observed
take-
phenomena would be that they are moving closer.
Hold up.
Not that they're attracting. Now you're starting out with the assumption you're trying to prove.
Attracting, moving closer.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
How do you
Attracting assumes that they are actually being pulled towards each other. The observation is that they are moving closer.
Okay, but there's a relationship between the
No,
two.
that is what you're trying to prove.
Right. Okay. Well, anyways, Arwen, you illustrated the observation of dust clinging to things. So
Electrostatic.
we're scaling
Okay,
that.
That's
so in real
electrostatic
life,
forces.
Milo,
I've just
in
said
real
that.
life,
Did you ignore that bit too? I said it's electrostatic forces that cause that to happen.
Hold up.
The dust is negatively
I
charged,
mean, Nathan,
and it's attracted to something with a positive charge. That's electrostatic. That's nothing to
You
do with
wouldn't-
mass. Nothing.
Nathan, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that
Yeah, I
till
would
after
know
you
that.
test it.
Ugh.
You wouldn't know that until after you test it.
Right, Cavendish is nonsense. You haven't isolated any variables. You haven't observed a naturally occurring phenomena. It's not science.
Goku, go ahead,
Nathan,
Goku.
By the way, it's not an electrostatic force. That's a different effect.
That's what I'm saying, Nathan.
Material
Nathan is
clogs
saying some other stuff.
to itself, like to other particles of its
Yes,
type.
exactly.
It's not, and they're not differently charged. So, electrostatic force also exists. It's very interesting because it overbridges even distances,
So the
which like the regular capillary and surface tension forces do not do. They're always
So-
very dependent on being very close by to the other
so
particles.
Arwen, in the Cavendish experiment, would you be able to test for any
It's not an experiment.
electromagnetic?
How many times? It's not an experiment. Why do you keep calling it an experiment?
you want
I've got
the
to stop
you
you
want the
and tell you that it's not an experiment. Right? This is not science. Yeah, you need to formulate a decent hypothesis with an independent and a dependent variable, a cause and effect relationship. You've established none of this, yet you're still referring to it like it's some sort of science. It isn't.
So ask me what the hypothesis is again, and I'll tell you. And I'll tell you what the independent variable is.
What's
I'll
the
tell you
dependent
everything.
variable?
You haven't
What's the
Huh?
dependent variable?
the what? Sorry.
Dependent.
The
The dependent variable.
Dependent.
Yeah,
The force between the two objects.
that's a variable, is it?
It depends on the independent variable.
Sorry.
It's
Yes,
not
of
a
course it
variable, I'm
does.
changing-
It's a cause and effect relationship. I understand
Yeah.
this. What's the dependent variable?
The force between the two objects.
So you're varying the force between the objects. How on
No,
earth
you
are
don't
you
vary.
varying
You don't vary
that?
the dependent variable. You don't vary the dependent variable.
Right, but
So what
your
are you talking
dependent
about?
variable is a force.
Yes, you don't vary that.
Right.
Come on, man.
Well, then, that's my point. You don't vary it. You're trying to vary it. The
No, I'm
dependent
not.
variable is the effect that you are having.
Exactly. I'm directly varying the independent variable. What are you
To
confused
cause
about?
an effect on the dependent variable.
What?
To cause the effect.
Yes, the mass of an object affects the dependent variable. I'm not controlling the dependent variable.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
only
You're trying to vary it with your independent variable. That's what you do in an experiment. That's my point. That's why this is not an experiment. You're just dumb. Oh,
Dude,
you're just
I don't.
dumb. I give up. You're dumb.
All right, so can I talk to Goku?
No, stop referring to Cavendish as though it's some sort of scientifically valid experiment. It's not.
Nathan, you've already failed. You're thinking that I can vary the dependent variable, and I can't.
That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to cause an effect. That's what you're trying to establish. A cause and effect relationship. Absolutely. You're trying to vary the dependent variable, and you're trying to establish exactly what the cause is in the independent variable. That's what an experiment is. You're just an idiot.
So what's the problem?
The problem is you don't have a formulated scientific hypothesis. Exactly what I said to you initially. You're just formulating nonsense. Not only that, you haven't got an observed phenomenon. You have never observed masses attracting each other. This is nonsense.
Can I just give Milo some advice on how to play with balls in a shed? Let's leave the science out of it. Let him just play with his balls and see whatever he can figure out by that.
Milo, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
What, with regards to the observed phenomena that is required for the scientific method,
which Arwen already said what the observed phenomena is. So, yeah.
Dust attracts dust. Okay.
Yeah, we're scaling it.
With regards to the Cavendish experiment, the observed phenomena should be something like objects of mass attract other objects of mass. Dust attracting dust wouldn't satisfy that definition because they're not of mass.
They don't have mass? Dust doesn't have mass?
It's objects of mass, not objects that have got little mass. It's supposed to be big objects with mass.
Does dust have mass?
No, it's not satisfying the definition of objects of mass. No, it's objects of mass.
In what way?
It's supposed to be the bigger and the heavier the mass, the more it attracts another object.
So the dust is being attracted to things like my shelf, which is an object with bigger mass.
It's not satisfying the part of the experiment that you're thinking of doing, which is objects of mass, because that is the definition for the Cavendish experiment.
Yes, dust.
My question is,
you agree that dust has mass?
No, it's not. It's not. It's not satisfying.
So dust doesn't have mass.
Objects of mass.
No, hold up. I don't want to move on from this actually, because you just shot yourself in the foot.
Right.
Does dust have mass? I'm gonna ask you one more time. Does dust have mass?
Not for the purpose of demonstrating this.
No.
Just answer.
Does dust have mass?
No, let me answer. It's supposed to be a
correlation. Does have mass?
Stop interrupting. It's supposed to be a correlation with regards to the mass of the object. As the mass goes up, the core or the attractive force.
Does dust have less mass than a shelf?
You didn't listen, Milu. He's just explained that if you want to correlate dust to objects of mass attracting each other, then with the same veracity that a dust particle flies across your screen, you also need to have tables attracting each other with the same veracity. No. And they don't.
No.
It's nonsense.
No, because the force is proportionate to the mass of the objects.
Oh, really? So it proportionately decreases as you increase in size, does it? Wow, so the enormity of Earth must hardly have any force, and yet it holds oceans to it. It's incredible. Holds the entire atmosphere. It's incredible.
So what we've learned so far is that surface tension, surface tension only applies on very small things and at close distance. That's the whole thing. It doesn't scale up, and gravitational pull, that theory suggests that it does. That it scales up.
But how do you know it doesn't scale up?
If I can get to my question, I've not got there yet. My question is, can you demonstrate any objects of mass where they appear to be attracted towards each other? Any. So I'm not talking about dust. I'm talking about the Cavendish experiment. Can you demonstrate any
phenomenon? You want to see videos of the Cavendish experiment?
Yes. And then once you've shown the videos, then we'll look for the verification video that proves that it's true.
What's the verification video?
Well, the fact that many of them show that it's not true is the issue we'll come to. But yes, you can show a video where it appears that there might be an attractive force, but then we go to verify the claim, and then we realize that there's a lot of videos that question that the phenomena
So
that
let me
we're
ask.
testing.
So let me ask you this, Anthony, because we've already seen the Cavendish video. So
Sure.
I just want to know what your or what the objection to these videos are. Are there variables that aren't being taken into account?
Yeah,
Or
dozens.
if you have an explanation even for
Yes,
why it would
dozens.
seem that why it would seem that the object of smaller mass, why is it even moving in the direction of the object of larger mass? Why is
Well, the
that?
answer to your first
Well,
question
my
answers your
first-
second question. Basically, you've got 1,000,001 different variables that are at play. There's electromagnetism on the Earth for a start. There's air pressure going around the experiment, secondly.
Okay. So variables. Okay. So we got air pressure, we have magnetism. Those are two variables that need to be controlled. All right. So if this was done inside of a vacuum, you've already eliminated air pressure. If this was done with objects that
not
aren't
You're saying
magnetized,
if.
Not magnetism.
You're
You
saying
up.
couldn't
if.
isolate it.
You haven't done
no,
it.
hold up.
Not
Hold up.
even in a Faraday cage.
It's already been done. Hold up. So
No.
yeah.
No,
yeah,
you
of
can't.
course. Okay,
Hold
so
on.
two objects
That's
that are
interesting.
rocks. How about rocks? Are rocks magnetic?
Hold
Yes.
on.
Now
Sorry,
there
that was a
you're
claim
onto
that was
something.
interesting. Hold on, Arwin.
That's
Hold
okay.
on. Hold on. There's a
Non-ferric
claim to be
metal.
made. I want to hear that. So
Okay.
you say that
Close
the...
to have
Hold on,
some little
Arwin.
bit of effect.
Hold on. So you're saying there's an experiment been done, the Cavendish experiment, in quotes, has been done inside a Faraday cage vacuum chamber.
No, it's been done with non-magnetic materials.
Sorry,
And-
so not in a Faraday cage or a vacuum chamber, which is our
Why would it need to
objection
be?
then.
Why would it need to be in a Faraday cage?
To isolate the variables.
All right, so okay, I that's awesome that you said that because okay, the Faraday cage is to isolate which variable?
Electromagnetism.
All right, so now I'm controlling for that variable in a different way by using non-magnetic materials. So why would I need a Faraday cage on top of that?
So you've
Is
controlled
the
air pressure
entire
as well.
setup
So you've
gonna
done
be
it.
non-magnetic?
So this is
The
so
whole
what
thing
you're
is
saying
no
is they've done it
parts?
with.
Yeah, there's no metal parts to this
At
experiment.
all, nothing.
So let's
Yes.
see it then. Let's have a look.
Okay.
Let's have a look.
Hold up, let me look up the. So if I show you guys this,
Milo, let me ask you something.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Is it also
why,
not plastic?
Why do you think in
Because
Non-plastic.
real
certain
life?
plastics are also very much susceptible to
Non-plastic.
electromagnetism and static electricity.
Milo? Why
Okay,
do
go
we
ahead.
have to go to the
But
Cavendish
use lead or
experiment?
stone.
Arwen, may I ask
Hold
you
up,
a
can you let him talk, please?
question? Why do we have to go to the Cavendish experiment in real life to see mass attracting mass? Why
Okay,
don't we see this all over the place?
That's a
Why is this not happening
damn
all
good
over
question.
the place?
And that's a damn good question, and I'm gonna answer it this way. It's because the Earth has gravitational pull on every object. So
So-
this is a variable that we need to control for. And in order
And
to
how do we
control
do
for
that?
Who says it's got that?
Okay.
Why are you making this assertion?
you
Why
have
are
to
you making this
suspend
assertion? Well, hold
the
on.
objects
Why
that
have
are
you
in the
made this
experiment.
non-scientifically validated assertion?
But hold up. He's asking why you can't see this in everyday life. Objects attracting objects because there's variables in this in everyday life like
Okay.
friction, air pressure. There's magnetism. There's Earth's gravity.
Okay,
but-
all right.
Yeah,
all right,
Earth's
all right.
gravity.
Let me-
That
let me
assertion.
let me
Hold
put
on.
it this way. Let me
Hold
put it
on.
this way to you.
Why have
okay?
you slipped this in? Earth's gravity, non-scientific,
We could-
non-validated,
we could-
nonsense. Why are you slipping this assertion in like it's a variable that you're not controlling and needs to be controlled when it's non-proven nonsense?
No, but hold up. Okay, so we could take
Do you
away
mean
Earth's
hold
gravity.
up?
Yeah, you need
What do
to
you mean,
because
hold
you
up?
can't
Milo.
use the element that you're actually trying to
Milo.
prove with your
Yeah.
experiment.
Let me
within
ask.
the
Oh
experiment.
man. Oh, Goku, can I
Ah.
continue with my answer? I'm sorry. Like even if
Yeah, go
you discount gravity, there's other variables on Earth that wouldn't allow you to see this force because friction alone can stop two objects from showing this force. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, that's our
Okay.
point.
friction, air
All right,
pressure,
so let
all
me
these,
ask you
all these
this.
things work
That's
against
our
these
point,
this natural
Milu.
force.
That's our point.
All right.
But
You
that's why you have
aren't
to control for
controlling
them,
all the
Nathan.
variables. Are you talking over me? You finished your point, and I've said that's our point.
But that's why you control for them.
Oh, really? How
And
have
once
you
you- once
controlled
you
for
Okay,
them?
so if I were
In
to
this
ask you, if I were
Experiment
to
that
say
doesn't
to
have an
you,
observed
right,
phenomena.
that
Wait, hold up. So the way you control for them. So I said friction, is not allowing us to see these forces occur in everyday life. So friction, the way you account for friction is by suspending the experiment. There's less of a resistance on
Milo.
the experiment, so they can the objects can act naturally,
All right,
without the
forget,
influence of friction.
let's for a second
Naturally.
forget friction and all of that. Okay,
Uh-huh.
I'm a human being, right?
Right.
And I walk in a city and I walk next to a building, a
Mm-hmm.
skyscraper, right?
Right.
That has thousands of times more mass than I do.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
why am I not attracted to this building? Why does the building not suck me into it and I just stick to the wall?
So I'm
Or
gonna uh-huh.
or why if because obviously the mass of this building is definitely bigger than my mass, right?
Right.
So its gravity force should either take me and
Hey, no
start
dope.
orbiting me around it, or it should
No.
stick me to the building, right?
No.
Because
Be-
that's how gravity works.
no, because
This is what you're trying to prove, that mass attracts mass. That's what
but
I'm
hold up,
saying. So
because I think you're. Mm-hmm.
what is keeping me from being attracted to this building? Why? And
Well,
let's say not even
uh-huh.
me, a baseball. Take a
But
baseball and put it
can I
on the
just no,
sidewalk.
no,
Why is it not attracted to the building?
well, let's just stick to you. To why aren't you attracted
Okay.
to the building?
Okay.
There are you standing on the ground?
Yes.
Are you wearing shoes?
Yes.
Okay, so there you've already got two forces resisting this force of the building. These are two variables
What's
that are
shoes?
affecting. Yeah, friction. Do you know friction?
Okay. So what if I was wearing roller skates?
There's still friction.
Would, would I
How have
would
you
I
eliminated
would I
friction?
start
Friction
would I
is really
start
only applied in
How have you?
motion when
How
there
have you?
is
Hold up.
something to
You just substituted
friction
the word
with.
resistance for the word friction. We don't feel any inertial force being resisted in our soles of our shoes when we stand close by to a mountain. You don't suddenly feel the mass
yeah.
of that mountain pulling you, so your shoes have to resist the force of this giant
No,
mass right
Yeah.
next to you.
you're right.
It's utter
Yeah, Milo.
horseshit.
Milo.
You're
I'm
right.
just asking
Nonsense.
you to
Total
use a
nonsense.
little just trying to talk
I
to you in
think
a
you're.
way
I'm
like you
trying to.
could use a
Yeah,
little
I'm
bit
trying
of
to.
common
I
sense,
think
bro.
No, I want you to use.
accidentally
I want you to use
exchanged
common sense.
friction for pressure. Just
But this is
pressure.
But
this is
how
the
am I
thing.
not using common sense? You're
No,
going
because.
to an
Mhm.
experiment that has balls
Right.
hanging in a shed to prove that mass attracts mass. What
It's a.
I'm
It's
saying is,
yeah.
where would you come up with that experiment in the first place? What would you see in real life
Arvin
that would
already
make you
explained that.
say dust attracting dust? Okay, great. So you can
No, not
experiment
dust
with the
attracting
dust.
dust. Dust
What?
attracted to anything.
Dust
Yeah, but
attracts tables, doesn't it? You often see tables fly through the air towards the dust because of its inverse properties of magnetism. Obviously, with it being so small, its gravitational pull is enormous, so tables just
Nathan,
fly towards the dust,
Nathan,
don't they?
Nathan, have you tested dust for electromagnetism?
yeah, that's
It
what
does
dust
have
is.
an electromagnetic charge.
I'm
Right. Have you
sorry. I'm
tested
Yes,
sorry.
it-
I just have a question, real quick question. Is dust suspended by a variable? Is it like held in suspension by a variable? Because
right.
wouldn't that be something we'd have to control as a variable?
No.
Because because we're introducing it to control the test.
Yeah, he's right.
I'm just saying that this is an observation you can see. You can see objects of mass attracting other objects of mass, and
No, we can't. We never ever observed this. I have never once in my entire existence seen any objects of mass attracting any other object of mass. This is complete nonsense and a self-fulfilling prophecy on account of the fact that they require this object of mass attracting another object of mass to justify an hour radius and a sphere Earth. It's nonsense.
well, does dust have mass?
Yeah, dust does have mass.
Yeah,
Have you
and
tested? Okay.
stars,
Yeah.
the stars are circles as well. We don't argue then from the heavens down to the earth simply because
No.
simply because dust has
Mhm.
mass, and we observe that.
Mhm.
Okay, you would then have to. We're asking you to justify why you're moving to a greater mass and saying that's going to happen again. Not only that, but again, the dust particles
No.
are.
Mhm.
Listen, the dust particles are not suspended by anything. That's a variable that you are controlling and introducing into your Cavendish experiment that doesn't exist in real life. So
There
you're
is
all
What do you mean?
there is
That
another
doesn't make any
problem.
sense.
When you
Dust,
when we were,
dust is suspended by the mere fact that it's so light.
when we were talking about
Okay, you don't seem to understand that it's not the same variable. That's not analogous.
You think it's not. Just because you're saying it's not doesn't make it so. Sorry.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
they are. They're two different things.
It's an observed phenomena that can be scaled up, and
Are you saying it's the same
it shows
variable?
the same thing.
Hold on, Milu. Are you saying it's the same variable then? Because that's utter nonsense as well. You're just
What?
ignoring his point.
His point, because he didn't make one.
Yeah, he did. It's a totally separate variable. You've just ignored that point or chosen to.
what's holding the dust in space suspended in animation?
What does it matter if it's attracted to something?
So
with
it's not
other,
a string
with mass,
then. It's
I
not
can-
attached to a torsion bar
you're
then.
right,
It's not being
dust is a-
suspended then, right? It's just in the air. So it's not being suspended by this second variable, which you've just danced over and ignored when Plain Truth said it to you.
because if you do the experiment with something of a larger
It's not an
mass,
experiment. I just want to keep saying this to you. It's not an experiment.
all right. If you want to test this,
Yeah, that's our point. You have no observed phenomena. That's the point. Yeah? In order to have a scientific experiment, first you must observe a phenomena. And objects of mass do not attract objects of mass. It's nonsense.
we've just
Can
observed
I just,
the
on
dust
that point,
with mass.
can I also say that when you said before that the reason we don't see this in real world is because the influencing factors that we experience day to day negate
Okay,
it.
but can we agree that that's a
don't-
valid thing?
That means
That's
we
why
don't
we don't see it.
phenomena. What you're trying to do is manufacture a phenomena that you think is there because
No.
it's a story. It's a just so story, right?
Yeah, we don't really see the unicorns because they refract the light at such an angle that they cannot penetrate your eyes, right? So you don't actually get to see the unicorns, but I guarantee you they are really a phenomena. Now go and observe that phenomena. Oh, right,
Nathan,
well,
but-
we can manufacture a unicorn measuring machine. Hooray!
Nathan, but if this is the thing you guys have to understand. If we suspend two rocks, one of larger
Every time we get to this point where we demolish this horse shit, you just start telling us about the experiment again, and I'm tired of it. I know the Cavendish nonsense. It's nonsense. Circus
But if
stuff.
you-
It's just a
but can you
circus
hold
trick.
I think the
This
bit
is-
that we're struggling
even
on
if
is
it's all hold up. If it's all manufactured and it's all based on an assumption, we've created a phenomena pretty much.
Yeah,
Even if
you
it's
haven't
fabricated.
observed
Right.
it, create-
And it
you've
still needs to
conjured
be
it.
explained.
Yeah, that's it, Milu. Well done for making our point. You've done really well pointing out that you've got lots of variables you don't control. Congratulations for making our point there. And now you're pointing out that you've conjured this phenomena. Yes, we know.
No, I'm saying if I go based off of your position that all of this is manufactured, when two balls of different masses are put
Yeah,
next
all
to
this is manufactured. Objects of mass don't attract each other. Then you go into your experiment where you demonstrate something we never observe. You do it every time. It's getting tedious.
But the thing is that so how do you explain the Cavendish experiment?
I don't
Why
need
does
to.
the
I've got
smaller
no
mass-
phenomena to
Why
explain.
is
I
this-
don't need to, right? I don't need
Wait,
to.
hold on.
No, the explanation is it does not do what he says it does. That is
Nathan, okay, Anthony, if you were to do this experiment and the
It's not an
ball-
experiment. How many times have I got to say? Step 1 has not been fulfilled. We have no observed phenomena. You will never, ever, ever show me two objects of mass attracting each other, so you can go forward and formulate a hypothesis. You don't observe this. It does not happen. It's just nonsense. Nonsense you need for a presuppositional R value that makes your world spherical. That's all it's needed for.
This force exists whether we live on a ball or a flat Earth. This is what you have to
No,
understand.
it doesn't. Objects of mass never attract each other. We're not being pulled into mountains.
They
Nobody's
do.
being sucked to the closest massive thing. It's horseshit. Nobody's being attracted to any mass. It's just not happening, you idiot.
Nathan, but I've already explained why you're not being attracted to a mountain. I've already
Yeah,
explained
because
why.
our shoes resist the force of it sucking us towards it. What an absolute load of nonsense. Nobody has
Right,
ever got
where's
close
that
to
force
any
coming
massive
from?
object and felt themselves being pulled towards it. It's
Dark has a
horseshit.
question.
It's not. There's
no,
no
I was-
question being asked. I'm stating a fact. Nobody in human history has ever stood next to a massive object, like a mountain, and felt themselves being pulled towards the mountain, and a resistance in the soles of their shoes. This utter nonsense assertion is your cognitive dissonance accounting for something that doesn't really occur. We never experience objects of mass attracting one another. It never
Nathan.
happens.
Nathan, that's only one variable that's keeping you from being attracted to the mountain. So
Oh,
what?
right. So there's all sorts of other magical things that stop us seeing the unicorns, right? They somehow magically cancel out the net effect of this magical pseudo-force that you've invented, do they? They just magically cancel it out to the exact same degree. Oh, what a wonderful coincidence of the world we live in.
Yeah, that's the
But-
great scale negation. The great scale
But
negation.
this is the problem with your guys' line of thinking. That
Oh.
if you see this experiment in front of your face and all the variables are hold up,
Not
and all-
an experiment. How many times do I have to say this? You are not fulfilling the first step in the scientific method. This does not qualify as an experiment. This is just pseudoscience nonsense. Affirming the consequence, that's all you're doing. This is just nonsense. You will never ever demonstrate two objects of mass attracting themselves. It doesn't
dust
happen.
in my shelf. Dust in my shelf.
Right,
Dust
what's
in
the
my
phenomenon?
shelf.
What's the phenomenon you observe?
Dust is being attracted to my shelf.
Right.
Dust has less mass than my shelf. Therefore, larger masses attract objects of lesser mass. That is
Okay.
an observed phenomenon. So I
All
can
right,
move
so
on.
we're
I
observing
can move
dust
on
your
now.
shelf.
Excuse me?
The observed phenomena would be dust on your shelf. Correct?
No. Objects with lesser mass attracts objects
No.
more mass.
No, that's a presupposition. You're totally
This is
inserting
the
a conclusion
force
that you
that
haven't.
Do shelves have a special force on dust? Is that what you guys are
No.
saying? That's the conclusion I should
Not
have. That
assuming
my
that
shelf
there's an
has a
attractive force there.
how? Then why is the dust sticking to my shelf?
What
It's
if you
not
say I
making-
don't know? You just say I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could say I don't know, but you could also test it and scale it up. You could scale it up. You could
No.
see if
Your
if
observed phenomena is-
hold up, you could see if it applies to something bigger.
Listen.
Okay,
You
listen.
don't just stop there.
Okay, so let's do it with something bigger. Let's, rather than use a table, let's use a mountain and a person. The person being the equivalent of a speck of dust, relatively speaking, and the mountain being the equivalent of your shelf, relatively
Is
speaking.
that an experiment you want
Does
to
the
do?
mountain attract the person? Does the mountain attract the person when we scale it up?
Excuse
Why
me?
does a helium balloon go up?
Hold on,
not
Anthony.
come down?
Does,
Nathan was saying
does the
something.
mountain
Nathan was
attract
saying
the person the same way the dust is attracted to the shelf? We've scaled up the experiment. Does it happen?
Right.
Do people get attracted to the mass of the mountain like the dust is attracted to the shelf?
Okay, so now let's start controlling variables.
Would that be a
So now
no?
let's control-
Would that be
Hold
a
up.
no then? Is that a no?
Only if you
People
control
aren't
variables.
attracted to the massive mountain, even though relatively it's the same scale as your dust and
not-
shelf
it's
example.
Not. It's not.
Oh, it's different,
You're
is
the
it?
dust on Earth. You're a dust on Earth. If you scaled it, you're not a dust to the mountain.
Yeah, and the dust is dust on Earth, and so is the shelf a shelf on Earth. Yeah, it's
Okay,
the same.
can I say something just real quick because
That's
this is
crazy,
what it's this is what it seems like to me. Okay, Milo, you're observing dust on a shelf. Okay.
This is
No,
all
no,
an
no.
example.
Hold on.
But yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
that's fine. Yeah, but you're harping on it. You go back because when we talk about your daily
Because you guys made my
experience-
point.
Okay. All right. So here it is. Here's my question. Okay. When you observe dust on a shelf,
Right.
what gives you the idea to
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
extrapolate from that then proves that larger masses
Exactly.
do what you I mean, why are you jumping from one to the
It
next?
doesn't. That's why you have to test it.
For what?
Fucking
Test it for
hell.
what? No,
Look.
test it for what? You're presupposing something you want to test. Test it
I'm
for
not
what, Milo?
presupposing it. I'm not
Test it for what, Milo?
You make a
Milo.
hypothesis, and then you
Milo.
test that.
That's
Listen
not a
a sec, Milo.
hypothesis, that's a
The observed phenomena
presupposition.
in your dust example is that a shelf has dust on it.
Yeah.
Your
and
observed
based-
phenomena is not that the dust attracts the shelf attracts the dust. You're observing the phenomena of dust on your shelf, nothing more. Your hypothesis would be that there is an attractive force between the shelf and the dust. That would be
Yeah.
then your independent variable. So
But no.
Yeah.
The shelf,
Perhaps
the
a
shelf
ventilation
is an
system.
object with mass. The shelf is an
No.
object with mass, and the dust is also an object with mass.
yeah,
So we can move this past a shelf and dust.
no,
You
let's
understand?
stay on the shelf and dust because you have to. You think that there's a
Let's just put this to bed, Anthony. Hold on. Let's just remove a variable. Let's remove the air pressure and use the same dust and shelf example. You remove the air pressure, you have the same shelf attached to a side of a vacuum chamber, and then you let the dust go. Does it go towards the shelf, or does that object
No.
of mass go to the ground? Oh, it goes
You
to
know
the
why?
ground.
You know why?
Oh, right,
You know
because of the Earth's
So
mass.
this is why
Because
you
of the Earth's
suspend
mass.
objects. Well, hold
Because
up.
of the
This is
Earth's
why you
mass. So let me
suspend
get it right. So it doesn't go
Doesn't-
towards the
doesn't
shelf.
sound like
We
it,
remove a variable from your observed phenomena, and one variable, the whole shit show falls to pieces.
Nathan, because this is how science works, dude.
Don't tell me how this is science. You don't call me dude. Yeah? We just ripped you a new one. Yeah? And you want to carry on telling me what science is? It's absolutely pathetic. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. And a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, well, then you know exactly what to do. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it or subscribing if you have not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!